beyond survival, dancing in the flames of your own rebirth. Have you ever felt the searing heat of a box someone tried to place you in? That moment when society, family, or even your own mind attempted to define the edges of who you are allowed to be. Those boundaries, those limitations, those suffocating expectations that whisper, stay small, stay quiet, stay contained. I want to talk about fire today. Not the kind that destroys, but the kind that transforms, the kind that burns away the false containers we've been placed in and reveals something far more magnificent beneath the ashes. I recently had the profound privilege of interviewing Aieshia Dickey, a visionary whose work has fundamentally transformed how we understand trauma, self expression, and authentic presence. Her insights don't just challenge conventional thinking, they shatter it completely, offering us a revolutionary framework for understanding how our deepest wounds become our greatest sources of power. Aieshia isn't just a thought leader, she's a flame tender, someone who has walked through her own fires and emerged not diminished but illuminated. Her work has helped thousands reclaim their voices, their bodies, their stories, not as sources of shame, but as well springs of brilliance. She has created spaces where people can finally lay down the masks they've been wearing and breathe into the fullness of who they truly are. The truth Aisha revealed is both simple and revolutionary. Your past is not your prison, it's your palette. Let that sink in for a moment. The very experiences that society told you to hide, to be ashamed of, to overcome as quickly as possible, they're not just obstacles you've survived. They're the raw materials for the masterpiece you're creating with your life. This isn't some feel good platitude. This is the radical truth that changes everything about how we view trauma, resilience, and transformation. I want to introduce you to Aisha Rossley, Singaporean artist whose work has captivated galleries from Singapore to Paris to New York. What makes her painting so compelling isn't just technical skill, it's how she transforms her experiences of solitude and vulnerability into visual poetry that resonates across cultures and continents. Growing up in Southeast Asia, Rossley faced suffocating expectations about how a young woman artist should present herself and her work. The message was clear: make yourself smaller, less provocative, more palatable. But Rossley refused that narrative. Instead of hiding her struggles with isolation and visibility, she developed a visual language that turns those very tensions into her signature style. Her figurative paintings explore concealment and revelation simultaneously, creating layers that mirror the complexity of human psychology. She deliberately plays with what is shown and what remains hidden, a powerful metaphor for how we navigate our own vulnerabilities in the world. When critics tried to place her work in convenient categories, she responded by going deeper into her authentic expression. When galleries suggested more accessible themes, she doubled down on exploring the raw edges of human experience. Today, her work hangs in Christie's New York and prestigious galleries worldwide, not despite her refusal to fit into prescribed boxes, but because of it. This is what Aisha means when she says your past isn't your prison, it's your palette. The very constraints that were meant to diminish you become the distinctive elements that make your contribution to the world irreplaceable. But here's where most of us get stuck. We've been conditioned to believe that healing means erasing our scars, hiding our struggles, presenting a perfect, unmarked version of ourselves to the world. Ayesha challenges this directly with her second insight. Sensuality and self expression are acts of liberation, not shame. Think about that. In a world that profits from your self doubt, that has systematically taught certain bodies, certain voices, certain identities to make themselves smaller, to be less visible, to apologize for taking up space, embracing every facet of yourself becomes a revolutionary act. This isn't about performative vulnerability. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you've been taught to hide, your desires, your anger, your grief, your joy, your power, and recognizing them as sources of strength rather than weakness. Consider Tara Aisha Willis, an artist curator whose work bridges dance improvisation with Black life experience. Throughout her career, Willis faced the double barriers of being underrepresented as a Black woman in institutional spaces, while also challenging norms about whose stories deserve to be seen and heard in contemporary performance. Early in her career, she was often the only Black woman in rooms where decisions about important art were being made. She watched as certain bodies, certain movements, certain stories were deemed worthy of the spotlight while others were relegated to the margins. She felt the pressure to contort her artistic vision to fit existing structures, to make her work more universal, which often meant less specifically rooted in Black experience. Her response wasn't to shrink or conform. Instead, she created entirely new platforms, experimental lectures that blend movement with storytelling rooted in lived Black experience. She developed innovative programming that deliberately centers voices traditionally pushed to the periphery. Her work at the Huntington Library and Gardens, with the Back 40 Inches lecture series, created space for embodied knowledge to be valued alongside more traditional academic discourse. Now, appointed as a curator at the Getty Research Institute, Willis has transformed her specific lived experience into a source of power that opens doors for countless others. Her journey wasn't about overcoming her identity to succeed, it was about embracing it fully as the very source of her unique contribution. This is what happens when you refuse to be ashamed of who you are, when you embrace sensuality and self expression as pathways to liberation rather than sources of shame. You don't just free yourself, you create new possibilities for everyone around you. But let's be honest, this kind of authentic self expression isn't easy. It requires something that Aieshia identifies as her third crucial insight: presence is more powerful than perfection. We live in a culture obsessed with optimization, with filters, with presenting curated versions of ourselves. We're taught that if we can just be perfect enough, perfect bodies, perfect careers, perfect families, perfect social media feeds, then we'll finally be worthy of love, of success, of belonging. It's exhausting. And it's a lie. What Aisha discovered, what her work illuminates so powerfully, is that true connection, true impact, true transformation comes not from perfection, but from presence, from showing up authentically, scars visible, voice unmuted, truth unvarnished. This is about being witnessed in your reality rather than seeking permission or approval. Meet Aisha, an interdisciplinary London based artist whose practice spans metalwork, textiles, and technology. As a Black British woman navigating male dominated fields like metalwork while also addressing cultural taboos around women expressing strength and sensuality publicly, Aisha faced intersecting barriers that could have silenced her. In workshops across London, she noticed how women, particularly women of color, would apologize before touching the metal, before making noise with their hammers, before taking up space with their creations. They had been taught to make themselves small, to be perfect, or be invisible. Instead of accepting this reality, Aisha pioneered workshops and exhibitions centered on collective creation, using tactile materials and processes that encourage participants to embrace both vulnerability and power simultaneously. In her studios, mistakes aren't flaws to be hidden, they're opportunities for unexpected beauty. Rough edges aren't imperfections, they're evidence of authentic human creation. Her work has gained recognition across London's creative networks precisely because it creates inclusive spaces where diverse identities are celebrated rather than policed. She doesn't hide the challenges she's faced. She doesn't pretend to have all the answers. What she does is show up fully, channeling her lived experiences into collaborative art making focused on healing generational wounds through hands on expression. This is what Aisha means when she says presence is more powerful than perfection. When you stop trying to be flawless and start being real, you create a magnetic field that draws others toward their own authenticity. Now imagine what would happen if more people, more organizations, more communities, more leaders embraced these three principles. If we collectively recognized that our past traumas and challenges aren't just obstacles to overcome, but raw materials for creation. If we celebrated sensuality and self expression as pathways to liberation rather than sources of shame. If we valued authentic presence over polished perfection, we would see leaders showing up authentically without fear of judgment about their scars or stories. Workplaces would become safer spaces where vulnerability fuels innovation instead of stigma. Communities would witness greater resilience among those historically silenced. As trauma transforms into testimony, this shift could ignite cultures grounded not just in diversity, but true inclusion, in which every person glows unapologetically. But let's bring this from the theoretical to the practical. What does this mean for you right now, today? It means recognizing that the very experiences you've been trying to overcome, to move past, to heal from, they're not just chapters to close. They're the distinctive elements that make your contribution to the world irreplaceable. The trauma you survived, the challenges you've faced, the fires you've walked through, they've forged in you capacities and perspectives that the world desperately needs. It means embracing every facet of yourself, including those parts society has taught you to hide. Your desires, your anger, your grief, your joy, your power. These aren't weaknesses to overcome, they're well springs of creativity, connection, and transformation. It means showing up authentically rather than perfectly, letting your scars be visible, your voice unmuted, your truth unvarnished, being witnessed in your reality rather than seeking permission or approval. So here's my challenge to you. What box are you ready to burn down today? What part of yourself are you ready to reclaim from the ashes of expectation? What masterpiece are you prepared to create with the palette of your past? The world doesn't need your perfection, it needs your presence. It doesn't need you to fit neatly into prescribed categories. It needs you to dance wildly in the flames of your own becoming. Today, I invite you to join Aieshia Dickey's revolution, to let go of any box someone tried placing you inside, to honor all parts of yourself that survived fire, to recognize that your scars aren't secrets to hide. They are proof of your capacity to transform pain into power, trauma into testimony, survival into art. Because when you dare to dance in the flames of your own rebirth, you don't just change your own story, You ignite possibilities for everyone around you. You become a beacon for others still trapped in boxes of their own. You transform not just yourself, but the very world you inhabit. The fire is waiting, the dance is yours, and your rebirth begins now.